Let's talk about this Philando Castile shooting because I mean, this is just it's horrible. It's very disturbing, and you may not even want to hear any of this because it is the video has been released. Now you may remember when this shooting first took place in early July of last year. There was a video released by Castile's girlfriend, woman named Diamond Reynolds. She streamed it live on Facebook. And on the video on Facebook, for whatever reason, it's like the mirror image. So it appears like she's driving and Castile is in the passenger seat, but it's not the case. He was in the driver's seat. And you've heard the story, I imagine, that when the police officer came up to the car to cite them for a brake light that was out, Castile says, look, I want you to know I have a license to carry. I'm carrying. Because that's what apparently you're supposed to do when you get stopped by cops. Let them know immediately that you have a weapon so that you're not sneaking it on them. I mean, that's the idea, right? Like, if you are intending to shoot a police officer when they walk up, the first thing you're not going to say is like, officer, I want you to know I have a gun. In a non-threatening way. And so this video was released. This is now the Dashcam video. The video from the girlfriend took place after he was shot, while the cop was still there, apparently with his gun pulled on her, which we now realize from the video. This officer was charged with manslaughter and was just acquitted by a jury 2 days ago. Was it 2 days ago? Yeah. And when you see this, the idea that this guy was not guilty of manslaughter, I mean, it's pretty stunning. I mean, this is not like that case in South Carolina that we were talking about, where a driver, was running away from a police officer, and the officer shoots him in the back. But this is clearly a case where this guy comes up, and there's no doubt in my mind that if Philando Castile was white, this cop would have reacted differently. And to me, this looks like there is like a fundamental either lack of training or lack of training and a disposition on the force that is inherently distrustful of black people. In his testimony, apparently, he says, and this quote, well, I'll read the quote after the thing. So we've shortened the tape. We're taking it right from the moment where the officer approaches the car. Jeronimo Yanez approaches the car, begins to talk to him, and then after he shoots him, we're going to cut the video and go to where the cop is off camera and you can hear him. He's still microphoned. You can hear him retelling what happened to the first cop on the scene.
Sir, I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it, then. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out. Don't pull it out!
Okay, that is, you hear the guy goes, and we should say, prior to that, right, the cop was talking about with the red light. And so here they have, we'll pick up, they have now pulled Castile's body out of the car. They have the firing cop next to the police cruiser. You can't see them. Understand, too, there was a child in the back seat of this car. Go ahead.
Are you able to move
Okay.
the squad up so they're not all filming
I'm
across?
fucked up right now.
Okay.
Maybe mine or something?
I need you to just breathe. Okay? Breathe. Which direction did you fire your weapon?
Right at the driver, I had it right out.
Okay.
I had it pointed down. I don't know how many rounds I let out or anything.
Okay. So you were, I just need to know which one's your car right here.
Mine's the one that's pulling him over.
Okay. So you pointed just directly ahead of him.
Just directly at him. I had it at my waist.
Was he sitting in the car or was
He was sitting in the car, seat belted. I told him, that's your license. And then told me he had a firearm. I told him not to reach for it. And when he went down to grab, I told him not to reach for it. And then he kept it right there. And I told him to take his hands off of it. And then he had his grip a lot wider than a wallet.
Okay.
And I don't know where the gun was. He didn't tell me where the fucking gun was.
Okay.
And then it was just getting hanky. He was just staring straight ahead, and then I was getting fucking nervous. And then I told him, I told him to get his fucking hand off his gun.
Okay. Okay. Is everybody
Fuck!
Is everybody in custody? Do we have everybody? Were there
Yeah.
two
There was
people in the
just
car?
3 people in the
Three
car.
people in
It
the
was
car.
a female front seat passenger, the little girl in the back,
Breathe. Breathe in.
and the dude.
So that's him literally seconds after the shooting, retelling it to a police officer on the scene. And subsequent to that, he claimed that part of the reason why they pulled over the car was not just the headlight or the tail light, but that there was a physical description of a suspect from a strong arm robbery. And this is from the testimony he gave in the report, I think, when he finally met with Internal Affairs. Apparently, Yanez also said, I thought I was going to die. And I thought if he has the guts and the audacity, because he claims, Yanez claimed that he smelt marijuana in the car, the audacity to smoke marijuana in front of the 5-year-old girl and risk her lungs and risk her life by giving her secondhand smoke, and the front seat passenger doing the same thing, then what does he care, does he give about me? And I let off the rounds, and then after the rounds were off, the little girl was screaming. So, I mean, this is obviously a story after the fact to make up, because here's the point. The officer has to prove, and only has to prove, that he felt his life was at risk. And so he tells this story as a way of enhancing that. The idea that this guy thought, oh, here's a guy who totally doesn't care about anything, would definitely shoot a cop because he's exposing his child to secondhand marijuana smoke, is, I think, really hard to believe. But clearly the guy, it seems to me, the guy was completely panicked and out of control. And it is very hard to believe that what fed that panic, I mean, here's the problem, is that police officers only have to argue that my life was threatened. But essentially what we have here is that a material piece of evidence that can substantiate the claim that he feels his life is threatened has now become that the person you've pulled over is black. I mean, that's what this amounts to. That my threat, the threat on my life was justified because this guy was black, period. No amount, a lack or amount of behavior by this guy seems to mitigate that, right? I mean, take a step back. You're a cop. You approach a car. Officer, I need to tell you, I have a weapon. Okay, where is it? I mean, there's not enough training here to overcome this guy's obviously predisposition that a black guy represents a threat to me. And we don't know what's going on in that forest. You know, people have pointed out on Twitter that he has a, Cops Lives Matters bracelet. We don't know what the attitude is in this police department, whether or not there's some type of systemic training that basically says be afraid of black people. I mean, the only thing I can even like remotely relate this to is in the lead up to the 2004 RNC, we had a cop on a couple of times who had written a book. So we had him in for the book. And it turned out he was a friend of mine from college. And so he came in. And we would have off camera, off mic, we would have these conversations where it's like, there's going to be anarchists here. There's going to be fire bombs. There's going to be all this type of thing. And I'm like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not going to be happening in New York. And the way that they were being trained in the police department was that you were going to war. And this more or less normal guy, pretty sensitive guy, was convinced that he was going into battle. And if this is an attitude that's maintained in the department and in the station houses, and this cop approaches the car, and already the existence of a black guy then constitutes a rational reason to be afraid of for my life. That's basically what the message is, and that's probably what's going on there. And that's deeply problematic. Contrary to our guest yesterday, there is a big difference because whether it was Eric Holder or Loretta Lynch, the way the Department of Justice works is there's a division called the Civil Rights Division, formerly held that more liberal Eric Holder. The head of that department was Tom Perez. And they're the ones who are going to these police departments and saying, we're going to come in and investigate and find out systemic problems that you have here, particularly along those lines of race. That's not only going to not happen under the Trump administration. The head of the Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, has already announced that we even think it was problematic that we went that far. We don't want in any way to inhibit what you're doing as a police force.
It's called the Blue Lives Matter Division.
Exactly.
And it's and also that, you know, you explained well that why it was a manslaughter charge, and the anxiety he had and the racial biases he had is in no way exculpatory of a manslaughter conviction.
Apparently, it is.
Well, right, but in reality,
it shouldn't be.
That ain't a standard issue
it
defense.
Shouldn't be. And the thing is
I
that,
was
like, look,
scared
at the end of the
and I
day,
behaved
it's
utterly
not
recklessly
even
and murdered
about this
somebody.
one. It's not even about this one cop. Yes, that cop I think should have been convicted of manslaughter, but that would not be enough. Right. You need to go into the police force and whatever the factors are that are creating police officers' mindset that when they're out there, and just the way that they respond to that situation. I mean, you know, the guy gets down 3 steps and is behind the car. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know. Tactically, there's other things that could have been done too. Hi, folks. Sam Seder here. We still need your help on our Patreon page. YouTube ads have come back, but not nearly as much as we had before. So if you can help us out, any little bit helps. Head over to our Patreon page right at this URL, and you'll help us keep helping you by making videos